welcome to We'll Throw the After Party and what is probably the most multiverse week we are ever going to have on this show in terms of what we're talking about and what's been happening in our lives. So we have a lot to catch up on tonight, a lot to talk about tonight. Here's your full disclosure off the top that someone, as usual, did the required viewing mere hours before the show started and is now coming off of some wicked motion sickness and vertigo. So you're getting drowsy, Liz, this evening. And you've got two NHL finals viewers that are more concerned about the hockey score than digesting the multiverse, which no one can blame them for. So really, Marissa is going to tether this show together somehow with her brand new hair. It's going to be a really fun 2 hours, and we're so excited to hang out with all of you. Hello to JJ. Oh, I love this. Leah, you're with me. You just saw it today. Just quick show of hands. When did we all see this movie? I saw it today. Marissa, you saw it 2 days ago?
Yeah, Thursday.
Sly, when did you see the movie?
I saw it last Sunday.
As usual, Sly is the first to complete the homework, and Alexis?
Well,
Always.
I did have to do my homework on a weekend because I did see it by taking my nephew with me. And then we recorded the the last episode of season 2 of MC University right after. So, yeah, I did have to do it on a weekend because I was taking a child.
I listened to the episode today. It's so cute.
Can we get a link?
I had to cross listen because I had to make sure I wasn't making any of the same arguments that had already been made. And I did not know there would be a child present, and it was so cute.
Let's get the link and drop it in the comments for everyone to watch. I definitely need to listen as well, so I'll be joining everyone. Alexis, when did you see the movie?
I think I saw it
Thursday too. Yeah, you and Marissa on the same day.
Yeah.
No, you went the day before me.
A Wednesday. That makes more sense.
Very on brand for how things usually happen with the show. Sly gets ahead of the curve and gives everyone some warnings. I think usually Sly watches things before Alexis to kind of give a debrief. Alexis goes next, gets the note.
No.
And then Marissa
Alexis did not receive a debrief.
Alexis, it's true, you did not receive a debrief for this one. We'll get into all of that when we get into the multiverse, the Spider-Verse. What a film. And also, welcome back to our Marvel roots. We haven't done a Marvel episode in a minute, and we've got a big Marvel summer about to begin with all these new movies and shows coming out. So I'm excited to really dig back into the reason why we all band together in the first place. The band is back together talking about Marvel. But let's talk about what we've been enjoying, and maybe also we can add what we're stressed about, because I know that there's some stress about the hockey happening on the screen. So we can talk about that.
In my defense, there are two very important to me personally hockey games happening at the same time tonight. So I'm double stressed.
That is true.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot to keep track of. Yes, we will be doing after parties for Secret Invasion. So we'll be sharing more about that very soon. But yes, if you're watching Secret Invasion week by week, you'll be able to watch it right here with us. We'll be recapping it every week. We're so excited about it. We had a big break in the multiverse last weekend, which is why we did not do a show. Me and Marissa were living the Eras Tour life in Chicago. And that is the first thing on Marissa's list of what she's been enjoying. So Marissa, talk me through and spill the beans for everyone of what we got up to last weekend.
Oh my God. It was the best weekend ever. Liz came and stayed in my very own home. Her little head slept right back there. And Liz came in on Thursday. We went to Taylor Swift on Friday, and then we were dead on Saturday. And then we went again on Sunday. We tailgated on Sunday, and then Liz had to go home on Monday. It was very sad. But it was a grand weekend.
And we got to watch lots of movies together,
We
which was
watched
very
lots of movies.
And Marissa gave me the remote, and I accepted defeat and put on what movie, Marissa?
Liz, of her own volition, with no prodding whatsoever, I just opened my Apple TV home screen. I didn't even open an app. She navigated herself over to Disney Plus and put on Winter Soldier, all on her own.
I didn't even force Marissa to watch Civil War. I fully conceded to watching watching your film, which was fun. It was an experience to experience it through Marissa's perspective. And I don't know if my perspective changed. It was fun to watch Marissa watch it.
Marissa's perspective, aka quoting the entire film.
It's true. It's true. Like in another room, still be But we did watch something. We watched a couple things, but we watched something else that I actually wanted to talk about. And Alexis, I've not prepped you for this conversation, so here it comes. Alexis, have you seen the Hannah Montana movie?
No.
Oh my God, Alexis.
Here's the behind the scenes discussion we're going to have live. I think we need to watch it on this show because it was both of our first time watching it since it came out in 2009. And I did not link it together that the whole point of the movie is Hannah Montana goes home to Tennessee.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't. Okay. So I lived in a house that was chaotically strict about my viewing habits. So, like, NCIS was okay because science was involved, but Hannah Montana was not okay because she was sassy to her parents. So
I nannied for a family like that. I nannied for a family exactly like that.
Yeah. So I kind of know what Hannah Montana is about vaguely. Like she has like two identities, right?
Listen, the great news is you don't need to know anything.
Standalone. You don't have to know anything.
Cool.
But I do.
The movie is the one with the climb and the dude who like rescues her on horseback, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've seen this movie like many a time.
There's a lot of horses.
Really strong word, but I think that we need to watch it if people want us to react to Hannah Montana movie on the show because I needed Alexis'
takeover.
I needed Alexis's perspective on Tennessee. I needed to hear it because we were watching it and I was like, I don't know if this is actually Tennessee, if this is cartoon Tennessee, if this is like shitty Tennessee, like a representation of Tennessee, because it felt very stereotypical.
We are.
You're owning it already without having seen the movie. So you're going to have to let us know, folks, if you would want us to react to the Hannah Montana movie on the show. Maybe
if we do Hannah Montana, can we also do Xenon Girl of the 21st?
Yes.
I love Xenon so much.
We can do a double feature takeover. I love it. All right. We'll put it on the books. We'll figure it out after the show. That was fun to watch together and just the whole time talk about, is this really what Tennessee is like? Would Alexis really approve of like this farmer's market that looks very like a prop room put together? Like it was, there was a lot going on. But we had a great time in Chicago. There's lots of vlogs up on TikTok. If you haven't seen them, you can catch up. And then Marissa, did you enjoy anything else this week? Because I have nothing else to report. Not one thing.
Yeah. Not much else. At one point we started watching Wizards of Waverly Place and I just kept watching it after Liz left. So I've now watched all of season 3 and I'm into season 4. I think season 3 is the best, honestly. That's my current ranking. And then I finally got to see The Little Mermaid yesterday. Finally. I've been so busy and not able to see it. That's the last thing on my list. And I loved it. Oh my God. It's so good. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Most of my week was Liz and then recovering from Liz because I was so sad.
Recovering from Liz. It checks out. It checks out. Sly, what have you been enjoying this week? You have something written in your notes that I have been trying to decipher for way too many minutes now. So can you let us know what this big thing is in your notes? Was an analogy? Acronym. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I have been experiencing the deluxe edition of Stick Season, which is called "We'll All Be Here Forever," which is the acronym that I put in our notes. So yeah, that came out yesterday. Like time zones weird. Yesterday-ish. And it's 7 new songs with the album, and they're all incredible. I mean, I don't think we were expecting any less than that. I have some favorites, and I did before it came out claim no complaints just based on the snippet of it and what I thought the vibes of the song was going to be. I was so right too. I got called the fuck out by that song. And it's a great time. So yeah, more NoahCon. Very exciting for insufferable people, aka me personally. But yeah, that's been fun.
Listen, I love being roasted by my favorite artist. That's a favorite pastime of mine. I love that for you. What else have you been enjoying this week? So you have two things on your actually everything on your list. I'd like to hear more about these. So yeah, just continue walking us through.
Okay. Yeah. I'm still watching White Collar. I'm on season 3, episode 4. I just finished. So I'm out of feeling like we're in the divorce era, thank God. But because we were in the divorce era for too long, I did start reading fan fiction, and it's great. And reading fan fiction from like 10 years ago has just been such a joy. It's like such an experience, and like what a snippet of like fandom history and just like the history of the internet in general. And yeah, no, that's been a time. And then I've been listening to the podcast Too Many Men, which is a hockey podcast, because one of the oh my god, flash warning on the screen. Sorry, I totally don't have the game pulled up right next to me. One of the commentators for the Kraken on Root Sports won an Emmy. Her name's Allison, and she's on this podcast. And I was like, I should listen to this podcast, and it's actually very good. So I've been having a blast with that. And then the last thing on my list, I did enjoy my dinner tonight in the honor of Liz, which if anybody can guess what I ate for dinner tonight.
It's either McDonald's or it's French fries or it's something Canadian. No, okay, what was it? What was it?
I had Chipotle.
Ah,
That's what I was gonna say.
Well, I was like, what do I eat all the time? Chipotle is the Liz stamp of approval meal. It's just very hard for me to get said Chipotle. I love it.
You didn't even address that Liz and I are both wearing our Eras Tour merch, which I think neither of us have taken off since we bought it over a week ago.
I am wearing Liz's merch.
Which is also Taylor Swift merch. Alexis, you are not, but you know what you are? Perfect.
Slaying.
Thank you.
Sly, what's your Chipotle order?
Oh, I don't know. I got the there was like an online only quesadilla that was yummy, and I got that. And then I don't know, I just threw shit together in what sounded good in a burrito to me.
That's perfect.
However, I did have one complaint, and the first half of the burrito, I must have started for the wrong end. 0 spice, and then the second half, all of the spice. And I would have just liked a little more consistency in the spice throughout the experience.
That is part of the gluten-free experience. You get to decide your own bites. I don't have that kind of gamble, with a wrap. Yeah, but very, very understandable. Marissa got to experience me eating Chipotle in the flesh, which was biblical in proportions.
Liz was writing poetry about her burrito bowl. It
was a lot. It was a lot.
And we were wearing these outfits.
We were wearing these exact outfits, and I was looking equally as haggard as I do right now. So it was great. Alexis, what have you been enjoying this week?
I too have been watching White Collar, and it is such an interesting experience to rewatch a show that I have virtually no memory of, but that I watched at a very different point in my life. By which I mean everything is much more gay than I remember it being. And it is a constant joyous surprise every episode. So that has been a fun time. I have also been enjoying and not enjoying hockey, just generally. And the playoffs, which as a reminder, on this show created and hosted by a Canadian, there is a hockey game happening right now it would be the fourth game of the final round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And for those of you who may not watch hockey or may be like me 4 weeks ago, when on this very show, I said, I don't understand how long the acts of hockey are supposed to be. So that you understand, we are in the final round of the Stanley Cup. There are two teams playing against each other. There's a team that we like, meow, and there is a team that we don't like. And they are going to play around 7 games. And the first team to 4 wins. Yay! Okay? And they alternate between home and away for each team. And right now, our team, I'm making everybody root with me. Our team is at home. This game is very important because we are down by 1 game. The evil team we will not say has won 2 games, and our team, meow, has won 1 game. And to quote the great Wayne Gretzky / Mr. Rogers, it does not matter until you lose at home. Tonight is our second home game, okay? Is everybody still with me? I don't think so. This slide just lost their mind. This is our second home game. We won last night, and we need to win tonight. Right now, in the game that I cannot watch.
Puck literally just dropped. Update.
Okay, so if you were watching the game and you want to update us in the chat, here is your reminder that there are some things that you are supposed to update us about. 1 is the score and what happens to the score. 2 is anything Matt Kachuk does. If his mouth guard is in his mouth or out of his mouth. If his shirt is in his shorts or out of his shorts. If he is on a live mic. If he assists the goal. If he scores a goal. If he exists, I need to know about it. The same goes for 1, Alexander Sasha Barkov. Anything the man does, okay? If the goalies are goalieing, I also need to know, okay? And I feel, the music choices. I need to be updated on those as well. And anytime Biz says something stupid, I would also like to know whatever that is. Okay? Okay.
And I feel like we need to provide financial compensation to our viewers who do provide those updates. It's like a full-time job. I love it. Here's what I'm going to commit to the show tonight is let's get you out of here before the end of the game so that you can enjoy, sit through that last period and then not worry about doing commentary on the Spider-Verse at the same time. How's that sound? Maybe we'll cut the show 15 minutes tonight just to get us back to the game. Okay. Let's rant. How about that? Let's just keep this show moving. It helps that Marissa and I enjoyed all the same things last week, so only Marissa had to talk with her adequate mindset and not my motion sick one. Okay, what are we ranting about this evening? Hey, how many of us know what we're ranting about this evening? Show of hands.
Well,
that was going to be a thing. I thought all of you were going to raise your hands, but let me just try that again. I'm glad some of us are prepared. Marissa and I are stealing a note from Alexis and Sly where Marissa's going to pick my rant for me. Did I say Marissa and Sly? I meant Alexis and Sly. What did I just say?
You're doing great.
Okay.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Marissa's picking my rant is what I'm trying to say. We're bringing back the How I Would Interview series, which I used to do on TikTok a few years ago. And I've been feeling like I hit a wall with it. So to prove just how fast my mind can put these things together or not, Marissa's going to throw me my topic right before I hit start, and I'm just going to have to go for it. So that's what I'm doing tonight. Marissa, what are you ranting about?
It's not so much a rant delivered in rage as a rant delivered in love. I'm just going to share all of the new things I learned about Liz being her friend IRL versus on the web.
Terrifying. Sly, what are you ranting about this evening?
I'm ranting about reasons why Sly and Alexis should move to Nova Scotia.
Proved. Alexis, what are you ranting about this evening?
My rant, I had like 6 and I couldn't narrow it down. So we're just going to throw them all into one rant and hope for the best. And it's just going to be thoughts I had about hockey this week.
Would you like to share the sub note that you left in the doc that had me in hysterics?
I don't know why you thought it was funny either. The rest of this is a secret. Note to Alexis, pull up notes.
Because usually we'll put the sub points we would like to say in our rant, but instead none of us did that this week, and Alexis just put a note to pull up notes. I'm really excited to see what this is all about. All right, I'm going to hover over this start button. You can see my mouse there. Marissa, would you like to confirm that we have not talked about what topic you're about to give me? I have no idea what you're about to ask me to plan an interview for.
Liz has no idea what I'm about to ask her to plan an interview for.
Head empty and coming down from motion sickness. So Marissa, I'm going to start the timer in whenever you say it, like immediately after you say it.
All right. Liz, I want to know how you would interview Niall Horan about his new album, The Show.
Okay. So Niall's been doing a lot of press about the show. He's been doing a lot of viral gimmicks about the show. He did a weird like spa interview, and they had him like try to reach peak relaxation. And it was really long, and it kind of worked, but he's already a really relaxed guy. So I think you need to do the opposite of that and stress him out big time to get something different out of him, because he's getting really repetitive in the interviews he's doing. And he's already done an amusement park interview, so something different.
Okay, first thing I learned about Liz being with her IRL, I already knew that she liked potato chips. I've received many a text about storm chips, but I was awoken several mornings to Liz sitting on my couch eating potato chips at like 10 a.m. Which brings me to my next point. I sort of already knew this as well, but Liz is an early riser. Like, she's already 2 hours ahead of me in her regular time zone. I am not an early riser. The first morning she was here,
the reason we are moving to Nova Scotia is because running away to the countryside is romantic AF, and that just sounds like a good time. My second point on why we should move to Nova Scotia is it's way cooler than Tennessee, and for somebody who does not do well with warm temperatures, to live in capital T, capital S, the South is a choice.
That's so valid. Okay, thoughts I had about hockey this week. My first thought is that everybody is still trying to buy the Ottawa Senators, which, I think is a situation. And like Snoop Dogg is in the running. Ryan Reynolds was a thing. And I really think that Alpine should just buy them. And so I made a cute picture of this, but I don't think you could see it. But it kind of looks like that. I'm a boomer. And that was my first thought about hockey.
Okay, so situations that would stress Niall out. I don't think he'd be stressed by a lie detector test, but that is something that maybe I would try with him. And I'd try to pair him with someone asking questions that would stress him out, like bring in like a Louis Capaldi or something to do a lie detector test with him for Vanity Fair. He did the skincare routine video. Like he's really been doing a lot of the viral stuff. So I'm trying to think of stressful viral things that he hasn't already done. And my mind keeps going back to amusement park. So maybe we do put him on a roller coaster again and just grill him.
The first day Liz was here, she woke up 4 hours before me, and I woke up at 9:30. She was just sitting on my couch for 4 hours, just so excited for the day because we were going to Taylor Swift.
Many great updates in the group chat.
Also, if she even touches the sun, she needs sunscreen. Like if she steps outside, she needs to cover herself in sunscreen. I can't relate. She's also allergic to the air. She threatened to leave hair everywhere, and she did.
All right,
she
my third point for why we should move to Nova Scotia is that Liz is there, obviously. And a follow-up to that point specifically is then we could incorporate We'll Throw the After Party in Nova Scotia. Great business decision. A point from Alexis was that she would get to make all of the West Wing references, and that would be very fun and silly. And apparently, I'm an honorary Canadian. I don't know when that happened, but apparently it's because I use A unironically.
The next thought is that everybody is complaining about how the NHL is doing in the American market. And so because of that, we decided that Matt Tkachuk needed to be real famous, but we aren't actually doing anything like productive. And I think we should make Matt Tkachuk do the BuzzFeed puppy interview. And that would really improve the NHL standing in the American market. And I stand by that.
So the other thing that Niall's done that I really liked was on the James Corden show. He did an escape room with Julia Michaels, and it was a bit of a setup because, of course, they made it out of the escape room like at the exact moment they had to perform. But then my mind went to Manhunter. I don't know if anyone remembers that show where it would be like professional trackers would track people that would try and like escape them. I feel like that is stressful enough that Niall would be really funny because he would have no idea how to handle something like that. And you could ask him questions as he's trying to like escape an area in a half hour or something.
Liz is probably the only person that has ridden in my car while I am driving and has not once critiqued my driving. In fact, she complimented my driving and said, I live in a very stressful area to be a driver. Also, I learned that we are both so old. Our backs hurt, our legs hurt, our feet hurt. We're just old. She also just kept saying that my apartment is like a Disney Channel set. Like, every day she would say that. She also once described it as the Barbie dream house.
These next points are provided by Liz. Everybody say thank you, Liz. But the first note was lots of local cideries and craft drinks for Sly to try. And I've never been so affectionately called out. I love a cider. I love a craft drink. That's very exciting. Also, apparently there are many, many cats. We all love cats. We'll get to see lots of cats. Apparently people are extremely expressive and talkative, so it's easy to read people. We love that.
Okay, another thought that I had, completely unrelated, is that the Florida Panthers should do different things on their social media. And one of the things that I think they should do is reenact songs from High School Musical, because they are in fact the Florida Panthers and they have those colors. And that is why a High School Musical song has been stuck in my head forever. And so, okay, they should also explain the bone thing, because they just kind of like threw us into that whole situation.
Two things that Niall's doing right now that are really interesting that I would like to see teased out of more interviews he's doing right now. People are focusing too much on like the new sound and bringing back One Direction and not enough about coaching and songwriting. And those are the two areas of his talent that he's like really passionate about right now. So I would talk to him a lot more about like the songwriting process for his first album being in love with someone, which is what this album is. And then also about how he views like this next generation of musicians up and coming. The end.
Okay, one last thing that I learned about Liz that I didn't really learn, but it's just a thing that I find very endearing, which we've already touched on a little bit, is that she just kept saying, you're so lucky. When we would go to Chipotle, she'd be like, can you believe you get to eat this whenever you want? And then we go to Target and she'd be like, Marissa, you get to go to Target whenever you want. You're so lucky. Also, she's just very nice and courteous to those around her. And I think that's a combination of being Canadian and also just from a small town. People in Chicago are not that nice, even though it's the Midwest.
The next note Liz added was that there's lots of hockey and many new arenas being built, which is great. We love that. I, however, know zero things about hockey in Nova Scotia because the many other teams that I care about are very far away. But that's exciting. Maybe we'll learn. And we can seclude ourselves out in the woods if we want. We do want. And the last and final and most important point is it would talk Alexis out of considering moving to Alberta.
I was about to say, do you know where else there are hockey rinks and really good cider? Okay, it's fine. Everyone's judging me. I'm not going to reveal my motivation for that live on air. I'm really not. Okay, another thought I had this week was that Hockey Romance Book Talk really looked at a sport that is simultaneously the gayest and most homophobic thing I've ever witnessed, and really said straight functional romance would come out of this. And that's confusing to me.
As you should.
That's an excellent note to end on.
I need to just like rewind. Where does Alexis want to move?
Alberta.
I cannot escape.
We all veto.
Don't ask any questions. It was part of a very long and detailed maladaptive daydream that we really don't need to get into.
There are people who overhear this show every week who should not overhear that there are people on this show that want to move to Alberta.
Listen, he would disown me if he knew why I wanted to move to Alberta. So just comfort him with that
Patreon content, folks. Just kidding. We don't have a Patreon, but that's the conversation we'll have after the show. Wow. I have so many questions. Many, like so many. Where do I even start? How do you know what the Moose Heads is? I guess a lot of people know what the Moose Heads is. We do really well. That's our local, like, big team here. The Halifax team. It's called the Moose Heads. And they have a moose, and the colors are like red and green and kind of yellow. Alexis, you would actually.
That's a mascot that makes sense.
It
Moose
is.
Heads. It's really.
Hey, the Firebirds, very cool. I am biased, however.
I like that it's straightforward. Firebird.
I will say, I feel like, and this may be a rant in the future, but that the AHL names are really beating the NHL names. Like, I discovered that the Florida Everblades existed this week. That is the greatest fucking thing I have ever heard of.
Yeah, 100%. 100% spot on. I want to talk about some of the things Marissa said about our time together. The context about me waking up early, because I'm not a morning person. The 2-hour time change was kicking my ass with like the time I usually wake up for work. That was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I did wake up extraordinarily early the day we saw Taylor Swift because I woke up and was giggling. And I did text the group chat and was like, I'm fully giggling at 6 a.m.
It was fantastic. I also got a photo of Liz and like Marissa's still dead asleep in the bed.
Let's pull it up for the class.
It was iconic.
It was
Liz
good.
and I had a long conversation about my nails. Everybody else was dead asleep.
You know what? If Alexis is reliable for one thing, it's the early morning chat when nobody else is awake. You're reliable for many things, Alexis, but that's just one of my favorites.
But then Alexis betrayed me and said she thought that I was an early riser.
I did, yeah.
My peak performance is like 3 p.m.
Used to wake up at like 1 p.m. my time.
Thank you.
Marissa.
Regularly.
Marissa comes across as a like put together girly. And so in my head, that meant 8 a.m.
Marissa is a put together girly, but Marissa's house is a dollhouse. Marissa's house is a Disney Channel set. Marissa's house is meticulously planned to the square inch. My house is like if you took a dollhouse and shook it and then chucked it across the room. That's what my house is like. And Marissa's is like, everything's just
You were talking about Marissa's house, and I was like, I hope no one expects my house to be this way. Because my house, like Liz's, is like a 1970s Fisher-Price dollhouse that someone shook
up and threw across the room. But at least your house has an aesthetic to it.
Well, yeah, gay disaster.
Can I completely derail the conversation for a second?
Please do, my love.
I just need to talk about of all the juniors leagues, the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League is the worst name for anything ever. And that acronym is a nightmare. And I respect you for putting up with that.
So true.
Unrelated, apparently Tim Hortons is maybe releasing special merch. And if that is the case, unrelated, someone may need to ship me some.
They do merch almost every year.
Okay,
like
cool,
it's a thing. There's always like they had like the Justin Bieber merch. That was like a big switch up for them. They partnered with someone. It was did you miss all of this? Do we not know about Tim Biebs?
No, I do know about this. This is like hockey related something?
Yeah. Always. There's always
It's more important than Justin Bieber. Just to make that clear. I'm not asking for Justin Bieber merch from Canada.
Right. Okay. Listen, I will keep an eye for you. There's always different things that they're selling. Like there's always a hat or a jersey or a hockey card or something. The other reason why you should move to Nova Scotia is because so many incredible hockey players are from here. And it's if they're home, they're around.
Yeah.
We can't talk about this. We're moving on.
This is why I would choose Nova Scotia over the other options listed.
My rant next
There
week
were no other options listed, Alexis.
Of the 29 reasons I would maybe like to move to Canada.
Oh my God. Okay. How about we talk about the Spider-Verse? Shall we? Or we can do a whole episode dedicated to moving to Nova Scotia. We'll bring Fee on as a guest host. It'll be great.
There we go.
Done. Okay, we'll park it for another week. Okay, we're talking about Across the Spider-Verse. This is your spoiler warning for Across the Spider-Verse. Again, some of us have seen it as recently as today with short-term memory problems, and some of us have seen it as long ago as almost a week ago and probably remember it much better than I. So let's do some of our usual segments. Shall we toast?
Oh, well, I was going to toast with my fun taro bubble tea, but I did finish it in the first half. So I guess I'm toasting with my sparkling lemon spindrift, which means we get Liz's favorite moment of the show.
Oh, that was so good.
That was a good one.
That was clean.
That was like top. We're gonna have to do a compilation of every time you've opened a can on the show, because that was top of the list for sure. Okay, if you have not seen it, now's your time to leave. Goodbye. See you in the replay. Hello to all the replayers. Thanks for tuning in and watching it back. Hello, Alexis, who will watch this back at some point. Alexis of the future. Alexis once again showing up with a beautiful glass, some nice glassware. We love. What are you toasting with this evening?
It's fine. This is white grape juice, which I just realized while it is in my hand that I'm not supposed to be.
I was gonna say, didn't we have this conversation about how you're allergic to it?
So I'm gonna switch.
You're allergic to my juice, Alexis? Oh, that's so
I'm
sad.
gonna switch to Capri Sun. Whoops.
I
do
do
this a
have
lot.
white
I really
grape
do.
juice, of course, always on deck. But I will be toasting with the remnants of my morning coffee.
There you go.
Who knows what Liz is toasting with? There's
Who
been an
knows?
emergency.
Indeed. However,
I love when she just leaves.
I love it too. I have not seen a single shot where the jersey is outside of the little like back of the shorts
really?
thing. And it's driving me up a freaking wall. So you know.
Interesting.
All right, I'm back. Thanks for filling the air for a minute there. That was great. No idea what you said. Can't wait to watch it back. I just have water because I drank a Diet Coke in the movie theater while I had motion sickness, and that was like one of the worst choices I've ever made. So we are trying to recover from that. Cheers! Woohoo! Cheers! All right, let's talk about what we're toasting to. I'm gonna go first. I need to start my toast with a question, which was, did any of you catch the villain in this movie that was like typeface and it was about being a font?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And none of you thought that's going to be the funniest thing that Liz sees in her entire life, because she is a font nerd and loves fonts with her entire being.
I did think about you.
It
Did
did,
you?
But then I
I
was immediately accused of spoilers the second I said anything about this movie. So I zipped it
Let's
up.
be clear that Marissa spoiled the Andrew Garfield moment for me. That's a pretty big one.
In a group chat that you almost never read, and presumably there would have been 25 more messages before you got back to it. I thought I was safe.
Listen.
Is it bad that I saw the font thing and I thought about Sly instead of
Yes, it is. I'm kidding.
Listen, I am still thinking about the Centero bag problem every day of my life. And that was close enough to font that I was like, hey.
No, that's valid.
My face
Specifically,
was on screen. Ignore my face.
Specifically, what was so funny to me about that was the line. He said, "Go to hell," but it was "Go to Helvetica."
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I am, if I haven't said it on the show before, let me be very loud about this. I am the #1 Helvetica hater. I hate Helvetica fonts.
It's bad.
It's
Thank
We
God.
need that on a shirt yesterday.
I hate Helvetica. So when he said "Go to Helvetica," it was funny on every, like, that was the ultimate joke written for Liz in the entire world, was a font-based villain saying "Go to Helvetica." That was the most Liz coded thing that's ever happened in the greater MCU. So I'm gonna toast to go back to Helvetica. Cheers. Marissa, what are you toasting to?
Spoiler alert. There's a clip of Andrew Garfield in this movie. And I am toasting to my husband, Andrew Garfield, doing what he does best, which is crying.
Yeah.
Cheers to him.
Mm-hmm. Sly, what are you toasting to?
First of all, yes, we absolutely do need that shirt.
Yeah.
However, my toast this week is to children's media that grows with its audience. And so, like, Into the Spider-Verse was targeted at a little bit younger age range than this movie was. And as somebody who went with a kid who was the target age for both of these movies, and getting to watch him experience it just brought me so much joy. So that's what I'm toasting to.
Wholesome toast. Wholesome toast.
Cheers.
All right, Alexis, finish strong.
No, I'm toasting to Spidey Cat. And I want to be clear that I didn't like this particular cat, but I did like that there was a Spidey Cat. So that is progress.
Before we move on, I do need to say on the topic of animal spider people, that's the right way to say that, and moments in the movie that made us immediately think of somebody else in the room. The second that T-Rex spider person thing showed up, my jaw was on the floor, and I was like, no way Alexis got a dinosaur in this movie. I was thrilled for you, even if it was a T-Rex, which is, very, very publicly not our favorite dinosaur.
Not our favorite
not even
dinosaur.
on the list. But I was thrilled that there was a dinosaur in this movie.
It was very wonderful for me personally.
That was big for you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And even it was like, what was the joke that they said, oh, like, I think I've seen everything. And then like the dinosaur came into frame. It was just like, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Yeah. All right. With that, let's go into some roses and thorns. I think we're going to have some overlap here. I'll get things started. My rose was Oscar Isaac, who,
Yeah, we knew.
it's hard for me to talk about Oscar Isaac on this show. I have physical falling to floor behaviors when I talk about how phenomenal I think he is. And I'm currently fighting the fight of my life to not go see him on Broadway because your girl don't got the money for that. But I did get to see him or hear him in this movie. And I just think he's got such great tone for animation. Like, I thought he translated so well. And I was a big fan. And I could just talk.
Definitely not an example of taking this famous actor and putting them in a voice actor role and them existing. He definitely killed it for sure.
Yeah. And I'm curious what kind of like coaching he may have had, or like what his process was to do that, because it wasn't that it was so far off for him, but it just was good. It was just good. So maybe I hope that they do some behind the scenes, like they ship YouTube features or whatever, because I guess we don't have DVD featurettes anymore. That was like a big millennial cusp thought that just crossed in my brain. I'd love to see some of that behind the scenes. My thorn was vertigo. Every time that camera was going upside down, twist and turban, and the slower it was happening, the worse it was. If it was quick and then the movie kept going, I could kind of be okay. But if it was like a very slow, gradual upside, I was like, whoa, this is horrible. So I don't like when that happens. Generally, I don't like pain to get vertigo. That's not my favorite activity. And so I'm going to toss it to you because I think that your thorn builds on that.
Yeah, my thorn was I didn't have too many problems watching it in the theater, but I did preemptively take a Dramamine, and I did watch like 95% of this movie with sunglasses on. So like it was fine because I took so many preventative measures for myself personally. But my thorn is that there were a lot of flashing lights and a lot of motion that were not in the first one. Like, I'm fine with the first one. I can watch that one, no problem. And I could not watch this one, no problem. I had to take very extreme steps to be able to experience this movie in a theater.
Yep, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done that. What was your rose?
Oh, my rose. While Bunky's in the chat, I'm just gonna read what I wrote in my notes directly. Stealing from Bunky, the animation style felt really grounded in the space. Like you always like knew where you were in relation to the environment, which is something that I don't always get with a lot of action properties, especially animated properties. And Bunky said that on, I think, a close friend story, and I went, I'm stealing that thought for the show.
All I ever do is steal thoughts from Bunky. It's half my brand at the moment. Bunky had some thoughts around what it was like to be at the Taylor Swift tour right now. And Bunky went the weekend before Marissa and I did. And Marissa and I, our car ride home was just talking about how right Bunky was after the show. For the 20 minutes we were trying to get out of there, we're like, and Bunky said that, and that was really astute. And like, yeah. So yeah, definitely feel that. Marissa, what is your rose and thorn?
My rose is so very serious and critical and media analysis, right-brained. I'm just obsessed with the fact that in every universe of the multiverse, J. Jonah Jameson is played by J.K. Simmons. There is no universe in which he is not J. Jonah Jameson, which that's poetry to me. I love that. That's so funny. It's perfect.
It's true. It's hilarious. It's so good.
It's hysterical. My
J.K. Simmons, notably, in one, I'm Not Here, of course, a Sebastian Stan movie.
That's why I love to mention that movie that no one has watched.
I really love that movie. And it is a bit, but also I genuinely love that movie.
I know. Speaking of Sly, I'm going to step on my Sly Clone MC soapbox and rant about tight 90s for a second, because my thorn is that this movie is too long. I kept a lot of my opinions close to the chest for a second, but people kept asking me how I felt, and I kept sharing it, and now I feel very confident in saying I got bored watching this movie. I thought it was too long. And there are a lot of times where a 2-hour, 20-minute movie does not feel too long to me. This was one of the times where it did. And it was beautiful to watch. I think it is a 10 out of 10 film. It is a feat of filmmaking, but it was too long. And it was too much. It was too much for me and the 25 middle schoolers that were in the theater with me that got up every 15 minutes to get another free refill of popcorn. Half of my movie-going experience was watching children enter and exit the theater over and over again.
Oh my God.
I will say, just to back you up there, Marissa, that the pacing felt off to me. And I think that's why it felt long. But I think the pacing felt off because it is not finished. And I didn't know that going in. Like, I didn't know it was going to be a to be continued. So I was like, man, we are never going to get anywhere in this film because, like, we are still in the prequel and we're like an hour and a half in. So really, it's like, like a 5-hour movie. Like the story is going to be 5 hours long. So I don't know. I think if I would have gone in and known, it's going to be a to be continued. Like if I had done any research at all, it would have maybe not felt that way to me.
Yeah.
And here's my chance to bring Dune into the conversation, because this was the exact problem when Dune came out, my friends. The way that they pace that movie, if you don't know it's a to be continued, is painful. Because anyway, so I empathize with you, Alexis, because I went into Dune not realizing where they were going to cut it off. Still loved the movie, but it was my second rewatch where I got the pacing and was able to like enjoy the experience with what was happening, versus this movie I didn't know it was going to be a to be continued, and the person I went with did not, and had the same reaction of like, I didn't really understand until I looked at my watch and realized this thing wasn't going to wrap up, but that's what they were doing.
Yeah. I knew it was a to be continued going in because it has been on the MC University spreadsheet for like a year as like Spider-Verse Part 1 and Part 2. But my nephew didn't. And I will say I am 100% pro tight 90s. We love to see it. However, the pacing did not feel that long to me personally, because I did have 11-year-old in my ear commenting on the whole way through the movie. And honestly, that was the best way to experience this movie. We were just chatting back and forth the whole time about what was going on screen, all the little details we were picking out. And so we had a silly, goofy time.
Alexis, what was your rose?
My rose was our Spidey friend from Mumbai. I liked all of that. I felt like that was a pretty short segment of the movie, but I got a full understanding of who he was and what his relationships were like, and who was important to him, and what that world looked like. I will also say there were a couple times we had kind of like a weird theater experience. Like we had some people that were clearly there because they had seen the first one. They like knew what was going on. Like this was their film. And then we had some kids there who I think were maybe a little young for it. And then we had some people there who had come with the people who knew what was going on, but had no idea what was going on, like my mother. And there were a couple times throughout the entire viewing experience that like 3 of us would laugh and it would kind of be awkward because everybody else would be like, One of those times was actually in the trailer. A trailer before the movie, there's a quote like Batman is a fascist, and the 3 of us lost it and no one else moved. But one of the times was chai tea. You're saying chai tea, that's tea. Like the 3 of us or whatever laughed before the punchline of before the joke was explained, and everybody else was sitting there, including my mother, like But I was like, I love this. I love how funny it is, and I love kind of that tribute to that culture and that world. So that was my rose.
I'm so relieved that other people had the experience of different people in the theater on beat. It was like there were 3 different beats happening in the theater: the no beat, the public facing joke beat, and then the insider joke beat. And it was very strange to be on the insider joke beat and listen to half, if not 70% of the theater have no fucking clue why they should be laughing. So it does make me feel better that was a shared experience here. I was like, oh man, am I a huge fucking nerd? And I am. But the movie also was kind of catered in a very specific way.
Yeah. I had the full diaspora as well. There was a girl on one side of me that fell asleep an hour into the movie. And then there was a group of girls on the other side of me that cheered when Nicole Kidman stepped in the puddle. So there was all kinds of energy happening around the theater. But I interrupted Alexis's rose and thorn. What's your rose? No, your thorn.
That was my rose. My thorn was, and I'm going to be very careful about this, I appreciate the live action Spider-Man being incorporated in this movie. I did not like the way it visually looked. To me, it kind of looked like almost like ogres in cages in comparison to this like really pretty animation. Like it was like this stark kind of out of like thing that felt out of context to me. It almost felt like when you're watching like I don't know, like a Loki or like a Fringe or like a show that has to do with like time travel or alternate universes, and they color gradient the thing that's out of place so that you notice. It kind of felt like that to me. And I wish that there was a way to incorporate kind of those live action characters and the, like the cameo that we were getting as well in a way that fit with the animation like a little bit more.
I really like how the first one incorporated like all of the storylines by including like this canon's Spider-Man having experiences from all 3 of the others and just like animating it into that universe. I thought the live action bits were fun because of how the web was designed. I thought it made it more seamless, but I can totally understand why that would be a little bit jarring.
I felt like when Donald Glover came on screen and he was a real person, that was cool to me.
Yeah.
That worked. And then the cut to Andrew and then the cut to, well, not the cut to Toby, but they had Toby's piece playing in the background. I totally agree with Alexis. I was like, that didn't look Right. Especially when they had that almost like domino stack of like all the spider people in the same position. And then they cut it. I was like, it's just like, it doesn't, I feel like if they had put in those bigger visuals, more real bodies alongside the animated ones, maybe it would have worked better, but it was just all animated spider people and then Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. So I was like, that actually takes me to my, oh, go ahead.
I just think part of the difference or the problem is that Donald Glover was filmed for this movie and the rest was just archival footage from like 10 years ago and 20 years ago. Like that's just not 4K footage.
I will say I loved the experience of, like we were saying earlier, 3 people cheering for Donald Glover. And then I immediately was like, who is that? Why is he in this movie? Like that was what I heard. Right. So it was like, woohoo! Like I was like, yes, Donald Glover. And then you heard like 4 people, including my mother, who were like, who is that? Why are we cheering? Why is he in this movie?
It's only like he's like the reason for the creation of the
I know. Like that's only like that's the reason we're here. But like, okay.
We are gathered together today. Okay, so my what the fuck moment perfectly plays into this because it was like so much build up, and then I feel like I missed a moment of the movie because I was waiting for Tom Holland. We got Donald Glover, and then we got Andrew Garfield, and then you have Toby, and then there was just no Tom Holland. So I was like a little bit.
I kind of agree.
I'll tell you what happened in my brain and then y'all can tell me what you think. Cause my chain of thought was cause Toby was kind of in that last moment of that whole sequence. Right. And then they started talking, I think cutting between Miguel and Miles again, but my brain was still waiting to see Tom's Spider-Man. And then my brain went to, because I'm a big fucking nerd, is this because of the Disney Sony debacle of who owns Spider-Man property and Sony has ownership over Andrew and Toby's footage or something, but like maybe they couldn't get permission to use like the Tom footage. Like my mind went there and stayed there, and then I realized I had to watch the movie and get back into it. And then I was like disappointed because I was like, oh, that feels silly that you would set up a moment like this and then like either intentionally leave out Tom, and maybe it'll make sense. Who knows? Like Tom said he wants to see Miles in the MC or in the Spider-Verse. Like he wants to see the live action thing. Like maybe it's a piece they'll connect down the line, but I felt like womp womp. Yeah, it felt incomplete. So that was disappointing to me.
I kind of agree. Cause like we even got like the Spider-Man like PS4 game Spider-Man. And I didn't really expect to see
my ever-loving mind when Insomniac Spider-Man popped up on the screen. That was
so
fun. It was fun. But like I didn't even expect to see footage from the MCU Spider-Mans. I thought like there would at least be one of those many Peters that sounded like Tom Holland. So at a certain point it became clear that like, no, that's not what we're doing here. But yeah, it is kind of weird that I was looking for him. I like wasn't even really conscious that I was looking for him, but I was still looking for him.
For sure. Okay, I want to go to Alexis's what the fuck moment because I think this is like a big can of worms that we're all gonna want to jump in on. It's a good can of worms. It's the one that I personally agree with.
So there's a quote in the movie where Gwen Stacy says, in every universe where Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, like it doesn't end well, right? It's basically the quote there. And I had a problem with it for a variety of reasons. I mean, Sly and I were talking earlier around the time that I realized that we are codependent. That was not something I previously realized about our relationship, but we're talking and I really, really liked this movie, but something that has continued to itch at in my brain around this movie, which I know we're going to get into a little bit later, is the way that Gwen's story was so intensely framed and impacted by only men. And I felt like this line was so illustrative of that, particularly because she says, in every universe where Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, like where I fall for this man, it doesn't end well for Gwen Stacy, right? And like there is something about that kind of like takes her autonomy away, I think a little bit, that I had problems with. My other issue with it was that further on in the movie, we talk about canon, like canon events. And it did seem that there was an implication that, at least in certain circumstances, maybe like a partially canon event, was this Gwen Stacy thing, right? Like Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man, like bad things happen. And I felt like it was such an opportunity, maybe even to say, in every universe where Gwen Stacy falls for a spider, bad things happen. It is so particular that she falls for Spider-Man. And I'm like, is there not a better story where Gwen Stacy falls for a Spider-Woman? Or and maybe a darker story where Gwen Stacy falls in love with herself, right? She doesn't have a lot of self-love in this film, right? Where she kind of makes that move to fall in love with herself and bad things still happen anyway, right? I think that's a very interesting story. And it just felt like in a movie that was doing some interesting things, like to not do anything interesting with that at all, right? To almost set that storyline back in like 2010 was a little bit of a miss for me. So that was kind of my WTF moment for the movie.
Perfectly said.
And
around of tacos for Alexis.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know they were drawing really heavily on the 2015 comic, which I adore so deeply, and it was like my first like Marvel specific comic I ever read, and it's like really reflective in the art style of this Gwen Stacy. But yeah, that was 2015. Like we can honor like that source material and tell more reflective stories of our time at the both yeah. You can hold those both truths at the same time.
And I think this line put into the context of this franchise, right? When the first one came out, it was like, this is what happens when Marvel Comics can be progressive. And you put progressive, like there was all of that kind of commentary around the first movie and how it felt so different from the MCU. And so like on a more understanding of the real world than maybe some of the projects Kevin Feige is overseeing, right? And how like, wow, like there's so much happening here that we can applaud. And in this line specifically, I just got major like, oh, of course this would happen in a property like this. Like, of course, in a Marvel franchise, we have enough care to spend years animating scenes like this, like almost a decade animating like scenes or putting things together like this, but you don't catch that your verbiage matters when you talk about Gwen Stacy falling in love. Like, or maybe it's not, you don't catch it, but it doesn't, however many edits it goes through or how many people want to critique it, it gets stuck in that like archaic model. Like it doesn't, it's hard to watch a movie that is so meticulously examined and created and then hear lines that feel careless.
Yeah.
Well, and I know some people, I can't remember who exactly it was, but there was some conversation on TikTok that in the advertising for this film, that the Gwen Stacy falling and like Miles being in frame was kind of presented as this like big part of the movie when it is in fact like not a big part of the film, and that advertising had kind of tried to be a tie-in to like the now. I think it's pretty. I don't think it's a stretch to say the cultural touchstone of like Gwen Stacy falling, right? Like I think everybody kind of knows that that's a thing, but that it was kind of overdone in the advertising for this film. It's kind of like a link to that, and I think that kind of goes to what you were saying, Liz, too. Like it's kind of keeps trying to like root this idea into something that like the rest of the film has moved past in a certain aspect. So
So we have a whole piece of the conversation, folks, about the canon material and all this. So I want to talk so much more about this, but I mean, let's put a pin in it and just leave the trail of breadcrumbs for us to pick up later. There's just so much to talk about here, and you're so freaking good, and your ideas are like it's like, Alexis, you're in my head, and you're like, oh, you're trying to say like this, and I'm like, yeah, I am trying to say this, but my brain is giving me like the Barney theme song right now, but that's what I want to say.
Also, a horrifying documentary. I watched that a couple of weeks ago. Stay away from the Barney documentary. It's
For
not
real.
worth it.
That's Patreon content. That's after the show. Yeah. Okay. What the fuck moments? Who has not said theirs yet? Marissa?
Me. Yeah. It's sort of along the same vein. I have one criticism about this movie, and it is that the movie starts and it ends, but what really happened? I really struggle with the way it was paced and the way it resolves, and that it doesn't resolve. And this is coming from the perspective of someone that knew it was a part one and knew that I was going to be ending on a cliffhanger. And I still really struggled with just like the whole structure of it. Like, I've spent 2 days after seeing this movie trying to think about like, okay, what was act one? What was act two? Where was the turn? I don't know. Like, I could not tell you. And I think my like big question is like, what was I supposed to take away from this movie other than that it is setting up the conclusion that will come in a year, hopefully, or two? Like, it very much to me felt, and again, I loved it. It was a wonderful film, but it felt like it was just laying out a lot of information and building towards something that will happen later. And like, I'm not allowed to form an opinion on that because I don't know what it's going to be yet. And so I think a lot of my like criticisms or questions or like opinions on how Gwen was written is even like, well, how is her story going to end? I don't know how any of this is going to shake out in the end. And I feel like I spent 2.5 hours watching beautiful animation, but not really moving forward very much.
And we're going to have a whole section of conversation coming up about the struggle of a trilogy and the second film. We're going to talk about some second films that we love, that we hate, and talk more about like this whole point. Sly, do you have a what the fuck moment you want to share?
I do. I did write one down and then realized that I had an actual what the fuck moment. And so my what the fuck moment is that we are now on like the 500th iteration of giving a number universe to the MCU as a canon. And this is like, and frankly, it's one of the most ridiculous. It's like 1999-99, which is just horrid. Like, that's a choice. But I'm just so frustrated. I'm glad we're not calling the MCU 616 because that's weird and silly. Why would you do that when you already have a 616? But it's really steams my nuggets that every single multiversal related project gives a different number to what is the canon of the MCU. So that
I think it's fun. Who can decide but God, Sly, that it's meta commentary. No one actually knows what universe you're in.
Oh no, I'm totally with Sly. It drove
Doctor Strange can't be like, this is 616, babe. You don't know that. It could be 1999999.
But how great was the line, I don't think he should practice medicine? We all laughed at that, right?
There were so many moments in this film that I wish I'd like brought a notepad to be like, that is a moment that made me think of this show. Because yes, That line was Edna. I was like, they wrote it for us. They are viewers of We'll Throw the After Party. The font joke, that line, and there was one other that the dinosaur, but there was another line in the film that was said that I was like, they watch the after party. They watch our little show every Saturday night. Yes, it was fantastic. Okay, let's talk about some of our conversation themes. Do we want to go back to some of the ones that we've already started talking about and kind of wrap those up, and then we'll dive into some of the newer topics later in the show? Does that work for you?
Good.
So we've already started talking about Alexis's what the fuck moment, and this idea of like Gwen Stacy and her story. I feel like this is a really good segue into a couple things. Specifically, this point of like the canon storyline arcs of Spider-Man, right? And this whole point that this film's trying to make is like the same things have to happen for every Spider person, and like Gwen's gotta fall in love, and someone's gotta die, and it's like, well, it's the same shit every time. It's the point of it. And I think that Alexis, I think, wrote these sub points, which was really interesting to me. And specifically this one of is that I've got to go my own way, a story we still need. So Alexis, I'd love to toss it to you. I think you're the one that wrote this note. Do you want to kind of open this thought about like the tropes from Spider-Man that we need and don't need in 2023?
Yeah, I think, this was one of those times too that I really put a conversation theme in because I was interested in what everybody else thought. And I mean, like, if you were watching the show, I'm interested in what you thought. If you were rewatching the show, I'm struggling a little bit because I'm somebody that loves a property that says, like, this is what we've always done. Like, this is the canon, and this is what happens when you change the canon, right? Like, I'm a French girly. I love that kind of stuff. But to me, I think it just raised some questions for me because I would love to be in a place, and maybe this is where the movie is going, right? I kind of hope this is where we're going. I would love to be in a place where heroes didn't have to have a tragic beginning. And I feel like one of the things that we were establishing here by this canon was, okay, somebody always has to die, right? Like you're the cop in your life, your friend or whatever, always has to die. Gwen Stacy always has to fall, right? Like these bad things have to happen for you to be Spider-Man, right? And I would like to be in a place, and I feel like Spider-Man is perhaps the hero to do it, where we don't have to have that tragedy, right? Where he can just he can stop, so-and-so from dying and still be a great superhero, right? You can be a good person and do big and brave and wonderful things outside of and regardless of trauma. Right. I think that's a good story to tell now. I think the B part to me was that, and this is the song I've had stuck in my head because for I don't know how long, Sly's heard a verse from this song for the past 2 hours. But I just felt a little, I couldn't decide if this I've got to go my own way and be different story is still needed. Because I'm not at an age where I need it, right? So I'm is that a compelling story to 11-year-olds watching this movie? Do they still need that narrative? I think there's a long Liz talk to be had about parenting practices and where we're at and where that narrative came from and blah, blah, blah. But for the sake of this show, do we still need that story? And was it the appropriate story to tell here? I had some cultural questions about whether that was a story that we were comfortable telling or felt needed to be told with the cultural pieces that were in this movie. But I think it is also a story that is told so often that in a movie that was doing some really interesting things, it also kind of felt, it was this is the story. We're doing all these cool things and there's all this all these different cool spider people and I'm seeing all this cool art. But I know this story. I've seen this story 1,000 times before. Right. And I'm not at a point where I can determine whether that is the point, whether the story is still needed, or if it is a little overdone.
I think one of my biggest problems with this movie is that we don't know how to feel about it because we don't know where it is going, and I feel so dependent on what the third act of this story is going to be to shape our opinions on this piece of the story. Because all of the conclusions I'm drawing makes it that I really like this movie, because I am assuming that this will be a break the mold type story. I am assuming that they are going to continue having really interesting takes on what it means to be a spider folk and what that story can be. However, is that what we're going to get? Nobody knows. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with writing an incomplete story. Like, the first movie ends and it stands alone. There are places to go afterwards, but you can watch that as a complete narrative. And this movie is not a complete narrative from start to finish. We start depending heavily on the narrative of the first, and we end depending heavily on the narrative from the third. And because we don't have that third piece, it is hard to have any sort of judgment of the story within this, because there wasn't a complete story.
I also think with that, there are things that they could have done to give us sub-complete stories in this film. Because they gave us a few things in that first act that I was expecting to see in however this film finished, or not even how it finished, but just later on. Like, Mom asks him to bring back a cake, be home early and bring back a cake. Why couldn't he have brought a cake into the wrong universe? Right? Because the mom specifically said, like, you can go, but bring back like a fresh cake with you. Like, if he had just shown up with a cake, she would have been like, what? And that would have been another funny hint that he was in the wrong spot. And then another thing that, like, they set up and then just ignored completely in this one was that whole college thing. And the guidance counselor being like, that's your story. Like, we know what your story is. And in reflection, it feels like maybe that was part of the joke. Like, oh, we know the Spider-Man story. It's that. But I wonder, like, I feel like they could have gone more into Miles's, like, perspective on, like, I wanted him to literally say more often, like, that's not my story. This isn't my story. My story is going to be different. Like, I feel like if he had hit us over the head a little bit more with, like, some similar verbiage, then I would have felt like, oh, the point of this movie was we think we know who he is, and now we don't know who he is. But instead, we're just like, oh, who's to say what happens next? So even if they
and I will say,
yeah, go ahead.
This might be a little bit of a tangent, but with Miles Morales as a character in particular, again, I'm a huge fan of the PS5 Miles Morales game. And so in watching the first movie, I was like, the whole time I was afraid that the father would be the one that passed away. And then again, in this movie, they once again made me fear the whole time that the dad was going to be killed off. And so for that to be hanging over the entirety of this film, and I mean, it does kind of come back in the wrong universe, and we'll get into how I feel about how that was set up. But that was hanging over all of these beats, and to then get the, like, in every universe, a captain has to die to tell the story. I was like, okay, this will be really great if you set it up as, that's not my story, I'm changing the narrative. But we didn't really lean that heavily into that.
Instead, I think and I'd have to watch it back to be, like, certain about what he said exactly, but what I remember hearing from him was more like, I'm going to save my dad.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Great. He should try and save his dad. Sure. Like, I can buy into that. But I don't think we got it as clearly as, like, maybe I feel like we should have had the superhero monologue. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were missing the, like, I'm going to be my own person, blah, 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 blah. And then we got, like, the bits and pieces of it across that very long sequence of him, like, escaping Miguel or whatever. Marissa, anything you want to say on this?
Not much more. I think you all covered it really well. It's hard for me because I really like the generic Spider-Man story. Like, I really like building out of your trauma. And I like that it is a story that repeats across every universe and that you can find your own way into it from different perspectives. But it's really hard for me within this story in particular because I think that Oscar Isaac is right. And I think that Miles is also right. And I think there is a very strong possibility that there is a way that he does not rewrite his narrative. And he's like, I am a Spider-Man, so this is what has to happen. And that freaks me out.
That was another problem I had with this movie, just in general, is that everyone was coming from a place of doing what they think is right, whether for themselves, their family, or their universe. And there was, like, no antagonist. I mean, like, Spot kind of, I guess, but still, he was operating from a place of, this is what is best for my body image, which, you know, valid, but like there was nobody to root against, I think, is my problem. Like, I am pro everyone and everybody's working against each other, and that's just stressful for me personally.
Yeah.
See, I did have an antagonist, and it was every time the camera flipped 180. So I did have something to root against.
Valid.
Real. I wonder if it's because we're grown-ups. Like, I wonder if there's a part of the, like, big bad vampire Spider-Man that is supposed to be like, I'm wrong, you need to follow the rules, and this is wrong, and kids will understand that this is wrong, or if it's just because we're adults and we're like, that's just how the world works.
Speaking for the 11-year-old, very clearly saw that he was just trying to do his best to protect the universe.
All right.
So.
All right. 100%. So with our age put on the table as a point of reference, I guess, let's talk about the meta-analysis here. And I want to talk about something very specific that, like, we were, like, almost crying laughing during the chase sequence. And this is one of my major takeaways from the film that I think is different from the three of you. Like, we walked out of that theater being like, this is one of our all-time favorite movies, like 100%. Because the thing that I ask for from properties like this constantly, and I say it all the time on the show, is like, you could have gone so much further with the world building, right? Like, I'm constantly asking properties like this to push their limit and how far they can go with showing us all the funny day-to-day shit that's happening, right? The fact that he had the day pass and then it came back and was like, I've never seen an adult wear a day pass before. It's usually just kids. And then when in the chase sequence, they had the spider people from the comic books that are like, I'm now on a wall. The wall seems normal. I'm now looking over here. And it's like, oh, you're too fucking slow for this movie, my guy. Like, we're way faster than you now. All of that kind of shit to me was so extreme, and it slowed the pace of the movie down. But that's what I go to a movie for, is all of those little kind of quirks and moments. And the whole movie felt like little quirks and moments that were like, you couldn't even keep track of them. They were coming so fast. Like, I can't wait to have this movie and be able to pause and look at every single spider person on the screen and see, like, zoom in on every single one of them, because they're all so funny in their own way. And, like, doing the big, like, get Spider-Man, and they all stop and, like, point at each other. Like, to me, that was a 10 out of 10 moment. Like, to me, I can't ask for more than that. And I left the theater being like, the commentary on what is canon in Spider-Man was so extreme, and not just the point of the film, but like everything about the film was exploiting what's canon. Even like Mumbai was like Mumbai Hatton, like, because they have to find a way to, like,
Mumbatten or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it was really effective, and like that's what made the movie fly by in 2.5 hours. Because I didn't really care about the pacing of the plot, because I was having so much fun with all the little tiny moments that were happening. I was like, I don't give a fuck about the plot. Like, give me I want to meet every single person that's animated on the screen, every single one of them.
That was the best part for me.
I don't know if this is actually building off or if my brain's just taking a tangent and running with it. But one of the little details that was not little to me, I thought was very glaring, was when he went into the back home machine or whatever it's called, and the DNA analysis popped up, and there was a big bright letters that said like from universe 42 that flashed in your face, and nobody else in my theater acknowledged that moment, and then they all freaked out once they realized that he went to the wrong universe, and I was like, did we not see the big glaring numbers saying where he was going?
Listen, in my defense, I had seen 42s all throughout this movie until we got to this moment. And I was like, oh, they're just peppering them in all over the place because the spider was from Universe 42. And at that point, I had seen like 25 different 42s. And so I was like, it's another 42. And then like 2 minutes later, I was like, oh.
In my defense, I missed all of the 42s because they were all during flashing light sequences. So it was a huge moment for me to realize we were in the wrong world. And I had to ask the person I went with, like, hey, actually, he said to me, he was like, did you realize we were in the wrong world? And I was like, yeah, I only realized it when they cut back to Gwen and she was looking into the empty bedroom. And then we go back to the other room and Miles is in it. He was like, yeah, I got it way before then. Like I was like, oh, that was a Liz problem. Got it.
Well, in your defense, it was also my entire theater problem too.
Alexis, where do you come in on all this?
You know, I'm interested to go back and rewatch the first one again because I have such fond memories of that movie. And to me, I got all of the things that you were saying, Liz, from the first one, and I also got a complete meal. So I'm interested to go back and see, like, if this one really did that meta commentary, like, so much bigger, and I'm just not remembering it. But something that I loved about this one that I wish they would have done, I wish it would have stayed on the screen longer. Like, I'm interested to be able to go back and like pause. Is when they popped up narration for me at the bottom. And like sometimes it was actually helpful. And then sometimes it was just like, this is Cockney slang. And I was like, yeah, I got that. Like narration box. My mother was like, oh, like, she's
very accurate for how I read comics. Half the time the little pop-up box is like, oh, as referenced in this comic. Or sometimes it's just like, this is the word for this. And I'm like, I got that. Thank you.
I got that. Thank you. Yeah. It was, but I thought, and it did stand out to me because there were some pieces that I was like, okay, so you're not going to explain the Felicity Smoke on his shoulder? Like, we're just going to fly right past Felicity Smoke, Tinkerbell. I know that is a DC reference. Do not at me. Keep your misogyny at home. But like, I was like, okay, we're not going to explain that, little Bessie. That's fine. But I did really love the pop-up boxes. I thought that was cool. And I always love seeing all the spider, people. I kind of wanted like a Brady Bunch style screen of all of them, like player card style, so I could, like kind of
choose your character.
Yeah, choose my character.
One thing that I really wish they had in a different way, like one thing that I really would have tied it together is if when they were entering, right, and they were like getting the band and all this stuff, if they had like a security desk with a wall of faces, like a monitor, like welcome Spider person, blah, 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 like a number, right? Like as people were walking in and out, so that like we could stop and get like that grand view. And I almost was waiting for that kind of moment because we had it with all those villains. Like we saw, here's a villain, here's a villain, here's a villain. We're going to make you look at all of them like in like a sequence. And then the spider people were more so in that chase scene. But I was more concerned about the chase a little bit at that point. And then I had to go to the bathrooms and I missed some of it. Like, I feel like we could have done some of that up front, Okay, we have a lot more to talk about. So let's move on to another topic. Why don't we talk about representation themes in this film, shall we? So, okay, maybe not, maybe yes. Are we okay to talk about representation?
Oh, no, it's just like, there's a Spider-Man that's an ice cream cone, and now we're like, representation.
And also there was just a goal from the team that we shall not name. So we're going to just use that downbeat and have this conversation. Sly, I think you have some notes on this. Why don't you start us off? With
Yeah,
the acknowledgement first and foremost that we're not going to do this whole conversation happening on the internet justice. So go see what some of our friends over on MCU TikTok have been saying and covering about all of this. We have lots of people that we can plug that we probably will put in a list after the show. I know I've been seeing tons of commentary. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I don't know if this has been all over everybody else's feed, but my Twitter has been a disaster this week, starting with the commentary about people reading this Gwen Stacy as trans and the transcoding within this film in particular that people are picking up and how they feel about that, and that was a big conversation. And then after that there was a big conversation about why are we centering the discussion around a white character and the potential trans narratives in a movie helmed by an Afro-Latina character. Which, great question. However, it then turned into the white trans versus the cis Afro-Latina, which we could talk about the issues of erasing BIPOC people from the trans community at a later date. But how those communities were seemingly being pitted against each other in discussions around this movie, which is not the point of this movie. Like, it is very cool how the color coding of Gwen Stacy is used as a mood ring, and how some of those colors happen to be blues and pinks and whites, and how some people can look at that and feel represented, and that's a valid read, right? Like, I'm not gonna be out here and try to speak for all trans people's reads on all characters, right? Like, if you see that, great, cool, we can enjoy that. We can be like, that's a cool little color theory nod that we are seeing. But it does not have to be the entire conversation around this film. There are so many great cultural narratives within this that other people who experience these cultures can speak to more clearly. I do want to humble plug the MC University about the first movie we did with Carlos, aka Nerd Today, where he talked about his experience and also his kids getting to see these movies. Incredible. Great conversation. But yeah, it's tiring as a, very obviously white trans person, seeing all of my fellow trans people who are also of my complexion completely ignore, the most at danger of our population, who we should be banding together and protecting and supporting and uplifting, and completely overpowering the narrative around this story, right? Like, I saw Gwen Stacy, and personally, I read her color coding as more bi, and that was fun for me. That's just the impression I got. However, I did not go on to make that my entire opinion of this film, if that makes sense. And so it's been really tiring that what I see on the internet surrounding this film has not been the uplifting of people talking about Miles' story, people talking about Pav's story, and all of the cool things we get. Is Miguel, like, there are so many cool pieces in this movie that we could talk about in forms of representation that should be centered in this narrative, and we can have a piece of the conversation. We can all fit in the pie. We just need to mix our ingredients a little bit better. This metaphor is running away from me. Somebody else, please stop.
You're good. Well said. I think that something I would add, which is a conversation some of us have been having, kind of like behind the scenes over the past few weeks is this idea that like the internet conversation is loud and tends to dominate a lot of the conversation. And alongside that, individual experience is not always what that conversation is. And I think about this film and I think about how many people, and especially like how many, because this movie is targeted to young people, teens, and like how many teens and young people who are trying to find their way in the world, like these characters who are seeing themselves represented in this film because of their sexuality or their race being represented or their country being represented or whatever they're like they see themselves in something in this film and they cherish it and they feel like part of it and they feel like it's something different than what they've seen in other forms of media, and how exciting that is for them and how wonderful that is for them. And they want to talk about like, oh, I see myself in this character or in that color like story or in this or that. And alongside that, the internet and the internet's loud conversations and takes tend to always skew towards uplifting the most white perspective, right? Like there's a reason why we talk like about people dating like Taylor Swift and Maddie Healy is what's coming to mind for me right now. This has been huge in the Taylor Swift community, and how you go to a Taylor Swift concert and some people don't even know who Maddie Healy is, but the internet is like really rightfully upset about it, and how like those are not two things that match. And I think about the people watching this film that are really excited about Gwen Stacy and they see themselves represented in the color story, and like how valid that is, and how the conversation online is allowed to have parts of that, but it's like what you said, Sly, like that cannot be the whole loud public facing conversation about this movie. And that's what the problem is. It's not you read Gwen Stacy as bi or as trans or however you want to read into the movie. It's that this loud box megaphone thing that happens when a piece of media comes out does not represent everything that happens in a film, and often doesn't skew towards representing the BIPOC people or perspectives in this film or in a piece of media. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know how as creators or as a platform we reconcile that, other than to just like plug the people that should have a voice in a moment like this, and like should like are making content and have platforms where they talk about this. So we'll post a list after the show of like, there's been all kinds of TikToks I've been seeing talking about this with lots of different perspectives on it. Yeah, that's where I'm going to end my thought before I end up in an analogy I don't know how to finish. Marissa, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Not much beyond that, other than it's unfortunate in all aspects of this conversation, when, or even the broader conversation, when the loudest voices rise to the top, and it sounds like it, or it feels like that's the only voice that's being heard, even if it's not the voice that people should be necessarily listening to the most. But yeah. There's a much broader conversation to be had about the representation within this movie, which I think is what Sly is really driving towards, is that this film is rich with representation, and it is natural and organic, and you don't even, it's not like thrown in your face or like, and now there's a spider person in a wheelchair. Aren't you so proud of us? It's like, yeah, that's just,
It's
and
so
what?
seamless
Mobility
within the
aids slay.
story.
Yeah.
And the fact that like we get so many different perspectives of seamless, explicit representation for all of the focus to be around, hey, this was implicitly coded in the color story. That's going to be the only thing we talk about when looking at, when there's so many rich, explicit, accurate, and well done pieces of representation to talk about within this movie.
Well said. Well said. Okay. Looking at the time, we have a lot to talk about. Let's jump into something else. Let's talk about second film stories, which is something that we started talking about earlier, and how this is the second of 3 of this storyline of Miles, this specific movie franchise of 3 that we're getting. And this idea of like the second movie slump, because it's not set up and it's not our final like arc and conclusion, right? We're kind of in this in between transition time. You're very kind of whatever act 2. And I think that for me, I've always been someone that loves this moment. I love High School Musical too. I really enjoyed this movie. I really love Catching Fire because it's the moment when it's not my brain trying to learn or my brain living through the trauma of the conclusion, right? And like all these things that people are going to get hurt, we're going to lose things along the way. Like, no, it's none of those things. It's a moment where you can really dig in on a character and who they are and what they believe, and you can, you know, play with the world that you're in and really kind of like tweak it and like poke at it and have fun with it. I always skew towards like the second film fun of it all. Like I have a silly, goofy time. I like having a silly, goofy time. I like getting lost in these worlds and moments without the stakes of like all the huge stuff. That's part of the reason why I love Civil War. It's a great film because the stakes are like whatever. It's kind of the middle of a lot of things going on, all interpersonal conflict and like some character building and some character not building. That's great. It's silly, goofy fun. I have a good time. But for each of you, what are your thoughts on like what do you like in a trilogy? How do you feel about this like second act moment? I know Marissa has a very differing opinion from mine. So I'll just you can take the mic, Marissa. Go ahead.
I am a High School Musical 2 anti. It is my least favorite of the trilogy. Mostly because they are not in high school or doing a musical. But I love Catching Fire. I think it's the strongest of the Hunger Games movies, but I think I come from the perspective that I already know how it ends. When I read Catching Fire, I could read Mockingjay. When I watched Catching Fire, I had read Mockingjay, and so I knew how it was going to end. I love Eclipse, which comes before Breaking Dawn, but I could read Breaking Dawn. Like, my issue is that I don't know how it ends, and so I feel like I am like teetering at the top of a cliff, and I'm either going to like have a tiny little drop and then a nice little river cruise, or I'm like going down the not the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls. Like, I don't like not knowing.
Niagara Falls is such a perfect reference for you and me. It is both where you grew up and where I grew up. It is great. Sorry, I just have to, that was great. Okay, Sly and Alexis, where do you come in on this?
It depends. I don't always love a trilogy. So I don't always love the middle piece of a trilogy. I, however, love a sequel that doesn't feel like a sequel, right? I love getting an expansion of the lore, of the universe, the story, of the character development. But to me, what makes a really strong sequel is that you can go into it without having seen the first one and be fully and equally invested. And
that's a great example of that. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. Thank you, Bucky. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so yeah, that's what I'm looking for in my sequels, and I don't usually get it. However, that is, ideal.
What about you, Alexis?
I'm trying to figure out what my answer is to that. I feel like this kind of goes back to what we said earlier, but if you are new to the show or have not listened to anything that's come out of my mouth ever, I am a fan of the TNT hit TV show Leverage. And one of the hallmarks of that show was that every season ended so that it ended, but that you also had somewhere to go in the future. And I think I favored that type of movie. So if this had been a second movie that also kind of had an end, right? But like I, had somewhere to go, I would probably have liked it even more than I did, right? So I don't know that it necessarily matters to me whether it's like a second or a third or a fourth or a fifth, I want like a full bite that can also be continuing. And not getting that in this one, I think, is kind of throwing off my understanding of like whether or not it was a good second movie.
I'm feeling like we're back in our Moon Knight era, because remember how every episode of that we kept being like, we can't judge it because we don't know what's gonna happen next, but we love our bestie Khonshu. Like that was every episode we did about that show, and I feel like, and do we just blame Oscar Isaac? Like he's the common thread here. Like
we could absolutely blame Oscar Isaac.
Listen,
Oscar Isaac ex Marvel Studios.
Oscar Isaac, if you are listening, I have a student in China who is obsessed with your performance in Moonlight. Moon Knight. This is a true story. My Taylor Swift bestie, who is like 16 years old and wants to work in government and just wants to chat about American stuff, watched Moon Knight and was like, oh, it's terrible, but Oscar Isaac is really great. And his takeaway, this is somebody trying to learn English, was that it was so interesting to hear the differences in his British accent and his American accent and the British phrasing and the English phrasing. So I was like, well, now I'm going to have to rewatch Moon Knight because that is not where my focus was the first time through. And so now in every class, he'll give me a little bit of like a British accent to America and like Oscar Isaac switch. He's like, Oscar Isaac is a very good actor. So when you watch this, Oscar Isaac, know that there's a 16-year-old in Harbin that is obsessed with you.
I love this so much. We have to use this moment to transition to the British representation in this film via Hobie. Major slay alert.
My best friend.
My new favorite character. Okay, can I go on a little tangent here for a moment?
Go.
Show of hands, or put a finger down if, no, show of hands, including everybody in the chat, you somehow found yourself in a very niche pool of study in your undergraduate about British Zine culture and feminist punk invasion. Oh, hey, I love that. I feel like I spent half of my undergraduate talking about punk resistance, British punk, feminist zines, and how they relate to British punk culture and anti-establishment culture in the UK. And I did a PR degree. Like I was not history. I did a lot of music classes. I did a lot of culture classes. So as soon as, and I knew nothing about Hobie prior to watching this film. I did not know he was a character. Like I had no spoilers about him. Okay. So when he came on screen, I immediately saw the entire thing in like a nanosecond. I was like, oh my God, this is the craziest point of commentary that I could possibly understand on a like micro nano level, which how many times have I ever come on the show and been like, I have a deep niche pool of expertise to offer with something Marvel related? Literally never. It's never happened once. And when I went online after the movie and I was trying to catch up on the conversation, I was seeing a lot of posts about like, oh, here's all of Hobie's lines with captions for people that didn't get it. And I was like, what does it say about me that I was beat for beat with this character and I did not miss one line or joke? Like I got every single reference coming out of that character's mouth. So that was an interesting experience with this film for me. Spider Punk and me. I'm a Spider Bunk shipper. Absolutely incredible. Marissa, you also
once again, Liz and I are just like this.
Insane. Talk to me about your experience with that character.
I did not need to be public information.
Oh my God. What? Okay, give us an update. What's happening in the hockey game before we sign off here?
Florida finally got a single point, and I said that as a reference to somebody who I will not name drop on this podcast and their Instagram stories, and it was only meant for the private chat, and I just got exposed, and I'm not happy about it.
Permanent part of after party show history. Lucky us.
It's part of the lore.
Marissa, I'll let you finish your thought, and then we'll move to close this hour.
I don't have more of a thought other than I want to be Hobie's friend, even though he doesn't have friends.
Absolutely. Okay. I think we should end this conversation with this incredible question from Alexis, which is, what would we be as spider people? And then, Alexis, would you like to read the sub comment that you wrote here? Because I want to hear it in your voice.
Oh, God. Yeah, sure. I can do that once I find it.
I have it highlighted. If I try and say this, it's not going to sound the same as if you say this.
Okay. I have who is Spidey-issa, who is Elizabeth the Spider, and who is Slider-Man, with an asterisk for our gender neutralness.
See, if I tried to say that, it would have all sounded like a clusterfuck coming out of my mouth. But you just said it very eloquently and lovely. And you didn't write a Spidey Alexis version of that line. And we also...
Nor did I come up with an answer to the question.
Just Alexis Spider. Just Spider Blake.
Missa Bo Spider. Missa Bo Spider Bobissa? Spider Bobissa?
I don't know.
I think that Marissa would be like a spider person that like always has like a coffee in hand. And that would have to be worked into it. Like you always have a Starbucks in hand. Like that's like the Starbucks iced coffee is like part of the situation. So like maybe it's that like you never spill it. Like you can toss it in the air and like shoot some webs and like grab it and like take a sip. Like there's something there.
I feel like it's very much just
Gwen.
like
in comes Inhaler Gwen, aka who Liz would be as a spider person.
Yes.
But it would be like a jetpack on my back. Like it wouldn't be like it would be like an inhaler the size of me. Like
no, because I want to see the comic bubble that's just like puff puff.
Yeah.
Duff. There it is.
Oh, here's another adorable thing that I learned about Liz being IRL. She calls her whole asthma routine her lung routine.
Yeah, my lung routine.
She takes her allergy pill, she does her puffer, and then she's like, I'm ready for the air.
It's true. The air was really... It's also worth noting publicly that Chicago had like a pollen warning while I was there. Like there was high pollen count and air quality pollution alerts because of the wildfires. The air was bad for Liz.
The air was rough. It was rough.
Anyway. Okay. In Mrs. Spidey Universe Spider-Man Broadway show.
Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark, Truthers Rise.
We love Turn Off.
Anytime Jen Damiano can get a check, I'm on her side.
You're there. Sly, what would your spider person be?
I don't know. You tell me. The problem with this is Peter Parker is already so like inherently transcoded.
Yeah, no notes on that end. No notes.
Yeah.
I do think that your car is an integral piece of this.
I had the same thought.
I feel like you're always
I don't know
driving,
why.
always on the go. I feel like you've got a spider mobile.
I leave my house maybe once every 2 weeks at most.
Okay, well, that's what's coming to mind for me.
But you love a drive.
I do love a drive.
Yeah.
That's true.
And
I could not exist in a place like New York where you cannot drive for shit.
There were lots of cars in some of those spider people's get-ups. So I think you've got a mobile, a Sly mobile.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Alexis?
She's a spy.
A spy.
She's a spider spy.
Spider spy? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you're a spy, and you're a cat. So it's like spy. That's the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think what we're getting at is Alexis would be the Black Widow if there was much more spider themes, but also could transform into a cat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
Well-
Catwoman and Black Widow, but also Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It just sounds like I'm not like all the other spiders, and that's really important to me personally. So
Yeah.
I love
I'm
this
not gonna
idea. I love this idea of Sly. Like, you know how like it's like you've all seen those maps of like which areas of the boroughs of New York the Spider-Man cover, and it's like this
Uh-huh.
spider person is in charge of these 3 streets, and we only ever see Miles in Brooklyn.
I'm
And then
just
it's like
in charge
Sly.
of all of
It's like
uptown New York.
Sly is like this 3 entire
Sly is
states.
the spider. Sly is the spider person in the forests. Because you know how it's like a big deal that like Spider-Man needs like tall buildings to thwip
Mhm.
between. Sly is the
redwood.
one that's in the forest and thwips between trees instead of buildings.
I will say for the record, I do live in, I can't say this word, rural?
Yeah.
That
Nailed
area.
it.
You nailed it. You nailed it. I'd love for you guys to say what spiders people you think you would be in the comments. Oh my god. Sly rides a bicycle. The puns are here. The puns are
Maybe
here.
a motorcycle.
Oh, motorcycle. There we go.
L-O-L.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Any final notes we would like to say about Across the Spider-Verse before we jet out of here? Maybe we can all just share. I know we didn't take notes while we were watching, but anyone have a note in particular that they would like to call out?
I didn't even write notes down.
Not
okay.
really a note, but one of my favorite Easter eggs that I haven't seen talked about a lot is that Gwen's band is called the Mary Janes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Illy.
Yep.
I love that.
I also love.
I'm back into Illy.
I've heard it so many times in the past 24 hours. It's unreal.
I also love the going off that, Marissa, the shoe change, which was like a big deal in the comics. But I think
Yeah.
we've kind of like moved so far past, like it's gotten forgotten a little bit, I think, recently. So the flip from the ballet flats to the Chuck Taylors. What's the other? There's another.
I
Converse
will
was really
build off of that because one of my favorite moments in the film was in the beginning where she has the ballet shoes. We won't talk about how ridiculous those ribbons are, but that's another issue. She does the I'm a poser pose land, but when she lands, the flats turn into point shoes and they have a very clearly defined box, and that made me giggle.
I screamed.
Me
Like,
too.
in the theater. I was like,
I would also throw in the shoes on Miles was very particular in this film and really detailed in this film. And I thought that it was like that's the level of detail that I love about this franchise. Like, and even the many times he was changing and unchanging and changing and unchanging and how he would like throw his clothes or throw his shoes or try and get them back. Like the Nike
When
Airs,
his roommate
like
was wearing his kicks.
are my Jordans?
Are those
Like
my Jordans?
yeah. Well, they're a size 9 or whatever he said. Yeah. So I did like the attention to the shoes in this film. I thought that was really fun. I think we're gonna see this movie for Oscars for sure. 1,000%. This will be another. I don't think there's any animated film coming down the pipe that could compete with this year, but I'm ready to be wrong.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Elemental, but I don't think it competes with this.
Disney marketing. Let's pick up the pace.
The
Pixar.
other one
Turn
I
up the
saw a
sound.
trailer for watching this movie was the Teenage Kraken one.
Oh yeah.
Very fun.
I thought you were gonna say the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is on.
That
were
trailer was
looking in the
great.
theater. It looks
Yeah.
so good. We are a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles household. We are thrilled.
Yeah.
with that one. And it's got our girl Io Adibri, who's voice acting, and it's gonna be so good. Anyway, lots to be excited about. Lots to look forward to. What's coming up for us next? What are we talking about next week?
Secret Invasion.
Secret
Pretty sure
Invasion.
it's our PowerPoint night next week.
Oh, everything you need to review before Secret Invasion, and we're gonna walk through all kinds of things. I don't know what I'm gonna talk about, so maybe I'll talk about things you don't need to know before watching Secret Invasion. I'll do like
There
an
you go.
alternate. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Either way, lots to look forward to next week on the show. And this week, you can find us all over the internet. I'm producer Liz everywhere, and I'm going to be making content. That's my commitment because I haven't been. So you can find me everywhere. And if I'm not posting, you have permission to yell at me in the DMs. Marissa?
You can find me everywhere at Miss Abobissa, and I will also be making content because Liz and I made a pact.
We did.
The Tony Awards are tomorrow, which doesn't feel real.
Sounds fake, but
maybe
okay.
I'll have something to say about it in the midst of a writer's strike and an air quality crisis in New York. Who knows what's gonna happen? But I'll be watching. So,
and we're rooting for Julia.
We're on Julia Lester's team.
Yeah, we are manifesting a big win for Julia.
Yeah.
Sly?
I mean, you can find me everywhere on the internet at SlyCloneMC. You can find me on Point in Progress, and Thirsty Thursday is the other show I do. However, I have made a pact to not do content, so maybe don't go look for me. Unless you want to see my obnoxious sports takes on Twitter, talking all about the dub, and my gripes with the scheduling of the AHL and NHL games happening at the same time. No, you are refreshing, waiting for the puck drop on the Firebirds game currently. Thank you very much.
Oh my God, you're so funny. And Alexis.
Theoretically, I am at Just Alexis Blake on TikTok and Instagram, and no pacts have been made to encourage me to produce content this week, so we'll see what happens.
Perfect. Perfectly said. And we'll see you next Saturday for our What to Know About Secret Invasion after party. Bye, everyone.